All right, man. Peace. So now I was looking through my DVR and I was watching this episode of First Take, and they ended the episode with a little segment on Jackie Robinson. So I said, you know what? Let me see what they have to say about Jackie Robinson and see what I can comment on based off of what they say, and we'll see how they report about Mr. Jackie Roosevelt Robinson. All right.
Jackie Robinson, what a strong man. He gave me an opportunity to not only play this great game of baseball, but to help break down color barriers throughout the world.
Jackie rifles the shot into left field. The first Negro player to appear in an All-Star game, and it's good for a double.
Let me say this. Jackie Robinson is often credited with being the first so-called black Major League Baseball player. He was not the first black Major League Baseball player. You have many so-called black Major League Baseball players that played in the 1800s. All right? From the 1860s all the way to through the 1880s, you had numerous so-called black baseball players. You had Bud Fowler. You had another cat. Believe his name was Walker. Last name Walker. I can't remember the brother's first name. But you had over 50 guys that played in the major leagues in the 1800s. Jackie Robinson gets a lot of credit for quote unquote integrating the major leagues. Why is that? Because Jackie Robinson is the baseball version of Martin Luther King. Meaning what? He had backing. All right. And we'll go into it as we watch this feature here.
For a double, and here comes Robinson, trying to steal home. He's safe, says the ump. He's out, says Yogi Berra.
No more bases than the entire Yankee team is directly responsible for Brooklyn winning the pennant. Jackie Robinson.
Right man at the right time because of him, and also thank you for letting us play this game.
Did you see Jackie Robinson hit that ball?
You are so disrespectful.
He is going to fall off a cliff.
Shut the hell up.
That's not even close to my best.
They're wrong. And I don't give a damn that they agree with me or not. If you don't care, you may not have heard the news. Tomorrow, right here in the City of Angels, the Los Angeles Dodgers will unveil a statue of Jackie Robinson, commemorating the 70-year anniversary of him integrating Major League Baseball.
False. Jackie Robinson did not so-called integrate Major League Baseball. Like I said, there were numerous so-called black baseball players in the 1800s in Major League Baseball. You just never hear about them because they want you to think, like I've said before, they want people to think that the so-called black man was nothing until the end of Jim Crow. All right? It's not about what happened. It's about what they report. All right? Not only did you have numerous so-called black professional baseball players in the 1800s, most of your best jockeys. A jockey is a horse, is a man who rides on top of a horse in horse racing. Most of your top jockeys were all black, so-called black, in the 1800s. All right, a lot of that does not get reported. So, again, Jackie Robinson, like I stated, he's the sports version of Martin Luther King. The reason why he was allowed into the major leagues was because the communists, so-called communists, they wanted to integrate Major League Baseball and integrate sports. That was part of the process to bring blacks into the fold of mainstream society so that these so-called bankers could easily take advantage of a mingled society. They want to deculturalize society so that it's easier to make people debt slaves. All right. That's really all it was about. Plus, like I stated earlier, the so-called black man is viewed as a toy and as simply as a source of entertainment. Branch Rickey basically just picked Jackie Robinson because he figured that he would be the best man for the job, the same way that Stanley Levinson and Bayard Rustin chose Martin Luther King. Now, Bayard Rustin, not to go off on a tangent, but Bayard Rustin learned a lot of tactics that he would teach Martin Luther King to use by going to study with Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi was an agent of the British Central Intelligence, MI5. All right. Gandhi was a trained operative. That's why they killed him. Maybe we'll go into that some other time. But yeah, Jackie Robinson, he also was a pawn of the Rockefellers. That's why they allowed him to form what they call the Freedom National Bank? Something like that he formed, the Freedom National Bank. Something along those lines. But the communists had been marching for the rights of so-called blacks to integrate sports from the 30s. Okay? It was not something where Branch Rickey laid down at night and said, I want to integrate baseball out of the kindness of my heart. He was very similar to a baseball version of Red Auerbach. He was looking for the best talent. All right. And he understood that the so-called black man was the most talented athlete. This is just facts. It's not anything race-based or racialized. It's just the truth. Right. Similar to Red Auerbach. That's why Red Auerbach went after guys like Bill Russell and Sam Jones and Casey Jones, etc. All right. They saw the best talent and they wanted it. But also, I personally believe, I have not found any data to corroborate this, but I personally believe that Branch Rickey was probably a paid agent of some banking organization that wanted to use him as a middleman to bring so-called blacks into Major League Baseball. Remember, integration is a major part of the socialist agenda, right? With these so-called international bankers. To deculturalize, they want everything deprivatized. They want everyone mixed together. When you're mixed together, you have a hard time understanding what's going on around you. All right. Well, I was going to say something else, but let's continue on with this video. Let's see what Stephen A. Simp has to say.
Baseball in 1947. It'll be historic because of the player he was, the pioneer he was, and obviously because of the man he was, evidenced by a legacy carried on throughout all of these years by his wonderful wife Rachel and the rest of the Robinson family.
And let me say this, Jackie Robinson, even though I'm saying certain things about him now, he meant well. All right. He truly believed in his cause. He was a very, very hard line integrationist. That's why I call him the baseball version of Martin Luther King. When I say he was a hardline integrationist, he wasn't necessarily a believer in living in the best neighborhood. He was a believer in forcing himself into white neighborhoods so that he could be a beacon of integration. All right. To me, there's a major difference between you wanting to live in a great neighborhood for yourself and for your children, no matter who's living around you, as opposed to purposefully saying, I have to live in a Caucasian neighborhood to be a beacon of integration. That's what he did. And it resulted in his son, both of his sons, becoming mentally damaged. If you don't know, his first son ended up being he ended up having a lot of issues. All right. His son had a lot of mental problems, drug problems, ended up going to Vietnam and ended up dying. I believe he died in a car crash when he came back. Right, when he was just starting to get his life back together. His other son became very disillusioned by American society and transplanted to the west coast of Africa. And I believe he owns a coffee company right now, or some type of coffee business that's rather successful. All right. I mean, those are the type of things that happen. You have to understand. And I see this a lot with a lot of so-called black people. They want to force their children into these environments with these white children, and they end up having all of these mental problems because they become a pariah in their schools. And that's what happened to his children in the school system, particularly his sons. But he was so focused on trying to force that Babylonian integration system that he did not care about his sons, and he did not understand until it was too late the mental effect that it had on both of his sons, especially the older one, who ended up, like I said, having all of these drug problems and ended up dying when he came home from serving in Vietnam. All right. Very bad, very, very bad situation. And as you know, with Jackie Robinson, he put himself through so much stress enduring all that racism, trying to force himself on the Caucasian, that he ended up by the age of 55 looking 75. He was blind. He had terrible diabetes. And, the brother just pined away.
Hell-bent on reminding all of us, that the player he was paled in comparison to the character of this man. It's why tomorrow will mark the 14th Jackie Robinson Day after the remembrance of what started in 2004. It's why all on-field personnel will wear the number 42 for the 9th consecutive season, though some players started wearing it back in 2007 after eventual Hall of Famer Ken Griffey Jr. made a request of the commissioner to do so. But it's also why we should all lament the fact that yet again, the number of African Americans in Major League Baseball, once as high as 18.7% in 1981, continues to dwindle.
That has nothing to do with anything. Once again, that's Stephen A. Smith trying to get on his high horse, worrying about a league that has about 900 total players. We're living in a country today where so-called black males are represent about what, 18, 19 million people, and we're supposed to be worried about a sports league of about 800 or 900 people and how many so-called black men they have in that league, as if that has any resonance in real life issues. Like, nobody cares. But like I said, Jackie Robinson is the baseball version of Martin Luther King. I mean, they've built statues for a lot of athletes, but the reason why it's so important to have one for him is because of what he represents, which is worldwide racial unity. They use him as a, kind of a totem or some form of symbol to make sure that people always want to come together. They always want to integrate. They always want to mix, even when your priorities really should be more about self-preservation and more about understanding who you are culturally. When I say self-preservation, I don't mean it as a singular person. I mean as a so-called community. All right, so-called black people are so worried about everybody else and never about what they need to do for themselves in regards to their culture and what it takes to form a real community. Now, Jackie Robinson, to his credit, he did try to form, like I said, a bank for the so-called black community. Like I said, I believe it's called the Freedom National Bank, but I can't quite remember the exact name of the bank. But it was backed by the Rockefellers. All right. That again is how you know that he was a pawn. He was backed by the Rockefellers. He would oftentimes attend a lot of their meetings. Right. Nelson Rockefeller was always a big proponent of Jackie Robinson. And Jackie Robinson also tried to become a proponent of Richard Nixon. Right. He did a lot of stomping for Richard Nixon. And after Richard Nixon was elected and, of course, went against all of his promises to help the so-called black community, Jackie Robinson tried to go down to the White House with a delegation of other blacks to meet up with Richard Nixon directly. And Richard Nixon would not even let him into the White House. He gave orders to his guards to not let Jackie Robinson into the White House, to the point where Jackie Robinson got so bitter about America at the end of his life that he did not even want to salute the flag or bow his head to the national anthem. All right. Because he figured out at the very end that he was being used as a pawn. And he still is used as a pawn today.
Presently, it's at 6.7% and hasn't been above 7.2% for the last 5 years. It's also why we should be concerned that MLB's Latino population is more than 27%, as has been the case with them for the last 4 years, and that their populace within the sport has been more than African Americans since 1994.
Why should we be concerned about how many so-called Latinos or so-called Hispanics are in the Major League Baseball, Stephen A? There's people out here starving. There's people out here getting incarcerated. There's people out here getting killed. And this silly-ass Negro is supposed to, telling people to be worried about how many more Hispanics are in the major leagues than the so-called American black man. So-called American black man.
Now, I could wax poetically about how Spanish-speaking blacks were ultimately categorized separately than American blacks, diluting the impact of what once was classified simply as the minority or the black community. But that's going a bit too deep right now.
No, it's not going deep at all. You don't know a damn thing about history. There's nothing about you that's deep, other than your damn hairline.
Instead, what I'll say instead is something far more simple. Labor from other countries ultimately was deemed cheaper than talent right here in America. The fact that they were individuals of color essentially killed two birds with one stone. You still have players who weren't just white. Therefore, the MLB wasn't compelled, as they should have been, to do something to address the paucity of African Americans in their sport. A fact MLB has tried to change, by the way, with its RBI program. But as a result, here we are. There are far more whites in Major League Baseball, far more Latinos, and far less blacks in the sport. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that's what Jackie Robinson intended.
I don't think that you know what Jackie Robinson intended. All right. I think that if Jackie Robinson was still alive today, he'd be like around 100 years old. I believe probably around 98 years old. If he was still alive today, I think that the least thing that will be on his mind is how many so-called blacks are in Major League Baseball. All right. Everything is cyclical. A lot of the downdrop or downturn in blacks in baseball is more due to so-called black people being interested in other sports. It just is what it is. When Jackie Robinson started playing baseball, I don't even know if there were any so-called blacks in the NBA or in the NFL. I believe that around the same time they started to get integrated. All right. I believe that the first so-called black man in basketball was named Nat Sweetwater Clifton. If I'm incorrect, somebody please correct me. And I believe that that one of the first so-called black men in football, you had a few. I believe it was Marion Motley, I know, was one. I can't remember some of the other brothers' names, but y'all can correct me in the comments section. But anyway, it's just so ridiculous, some of this guy and his ramblings. And he's claiming to know something about so-called history.
So it's nice that the MLB is celebrating Robinson. He's certainly worthy. But while remembering Jackie Robinson, let's remember not only his sacrifices, but why he sacrificed in the first place.
And let's also remember how he was used as a pawn, and how he was deceived, and how he was tricked, trying to thinking that he was doing something to benefit his so-called people, when he really was being duped. Let's remember that also.
Place. Inclusion, equality, civility, it all mattered. But so did actual participation.
Here he goes. He's promoting his socialist agenda again, inclusion and equality. All that really means is, white man, please give me a hug. Please love me, because I can't love myself until you love me.
And based on these numbers, things have actually gotten worse, not better.
Yeah, all these things: incarceration up, murders up, rape, unemployment, and the things that we supposed to be worried about is there's less baseball players.
If you want to see more of our Final Take segments, head over to our...
No, I'm good. I don't need any more of your Final Take segments. But I tell you what, y'all, what some of you viewers out there can do, you can check to see if there's a feature or documentary on Jackie Robinson. Ken Burns did a great one that I saw on PBS last year or 2 years ago, whenever it was. And you guys can check to see if it's on YouTube. It was very good, very informative. It shed some light on the communist influence on him being allowed into baseball. And it also shed a lot of light on a lot of the things that he went through after his career. All right. Jackie Robinson, despite how he's taught or what's taught about him, he wasn't a punk. All right. He used to get into fist fights in the military. He used to get into a lot of fist fights. He used to love to fight. He used to love to beat down people who disrespected him. All right. He was also in the 761st Tank Battalion. For those of you who don't know, the 761st was a tank battalion of all so-called black males that were involved with the liberation of many of these so-called concentration camps in Europe. I believe that they're the tank battalion that liberated Auschwitz, if I remember correctly. All right. If I'm wrong, somebody in the comments, please correct me. But I know that they were involved in the liberation of numerous so-called concentration camps, and I believe that they had the best battle record in the U.S. Army. I believe that Douglas MacArthur commandeered them, or was it General Patton? Can't remember. Sometimes brothers, there's so much information that sometimes they get a little jumbled up. But anyway, I just want to touch on this because I thought it was relevant. Peace.